Oh, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to give you the link to the slides. Chat. And I'm going to ask, what are you going to do with that link? If you want to get back to these slides in 2 months and see the most recent version of the slides, in case I've gone in and made some changes, how will you curate these slides? What will you do with them so you can get back to them in the future? And just feel free to unmute if you have a suggestion. And this is a general question. So I was talking to my colleagues, and I was just at the COABE conference, and this is an issue. This issue of knowing where your stuff is, right? That I think continues to be one of the challenges. If we think about technology these days as being communication and information technology, we've talked about creating content, consuming content, but curating content, I think, still tends to be one of the areas that we have the least conversations about, and we don't, we're maybe all a little unhappy with our tools and techniques, but we don't have a lot of opportunity to talk about it. So it's hard. I don't think I'll ever offer a workshop called what to do with a link to a slideshow, but I will say that every workshop should have this in it, because so I see Naima in the chat mentioned starring them, right? So when you've got this, if you open this link that I put in the chat, and you go to your Google Drive, it is going to show up in the shared with me. And in the shared with me, you could absolutely star it, right? If I right click on it, I get this drop down, and I have the option under organize to add to starred. And starred in the language of Google is favorite, right? So it will go into your favorite folder. And that's fine. The downside of the starred folder for me is that I'm not very disciplined. And if I show you my starred folder, you'll see that it's chaos. And it's not going to be very easy for me to get back to it. So I should do some work. But that's like way down the lane for me as far as coming in here and cleaning that up. So if you don't use the star a lot and you want to put stuff in here, that is totally going to be useful for you. And the key there is, if I come back here and I right click on it, I can go to organize and I can remove from start. And that's kind of the responsibility you have. So again, if someone shares a link with you, absolutely right, you could star it. You'll find it in the shared with me. Anything you open, when you get a link to a Google document, it's going to go in the shared with me, whether they share it that way or they share it with your Gmail account. But the shared with me is also kind of a chaos space, because it's going to be sorted by the date that something was added. And you can do some searching by, who shared it with you and the date it was shared. But again, I don't rely on this. I use this as my backup in case I'm like, oh, I didn't do what I'm telling everyone they should do. I didn't organize my stuff. I'm relying on this thing, which is a little bit just not a very fast, not a very efficient way to get back to content. So anybody else suggestions? Let me look at the chat, see, is there any other?
I
Yeah.
think if I remember right, I click on it and then I go to the file and then go to add shortcut.
Music
And
to my
then
ears, Sarah. Fantastic. Yes. So
and
file,
then yeah, once I'm there,
add shortcut.
yeah, um, it's going to suggest something, but I don't want that. Maybe I'll go to all locations if
Nice.
there's something that it doesn't work for. I mean, if the suggested ones don't work,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Well said. Yep.
and then all locations, and I can put it somewhere.
Yes. And this step is a little tricky in that you could certainly just put it into your drive, but then you're going to need to remember the name of the file to find it again. So it might
Hmm.
still be helpful to create a folder, or you may already have a folder that wasn't suggested. So what I usually then do is I go to my drive, I go all the way over to that little sideways arrow. That's going to show me all the folders in my drive. If I have a folder already for Google excitement, I can put it in there. Or once I get to this point, you'll see that a little file icon pops up, and that lets you create a new file, a new folder for your files. And that could be, again, something that you more specifically will remember the name of. You'll see that I have a kind of naming convention in my drive that I've added the number one in front of file folders that I use a lot. So the idea with that is that the one numbers come before the alphabet. So if I it's not so bad about up there, but like I have like my time tracking thing, that's going to be alphabetically down in the T area. By putting a one in front of it, it comes up actually above A. And so I can have a set of, this is probably what I should have been doing with my favoriting, right? This is what the stars should help me with, but this is my technique. And then I can take the one off when like CoApe 2025 is over. I could go in here now and I could rename it when I'm in my drive and get rid of the one, and then it will sync into the alphabet. So just know that these are what we're looking for is efficiency. There's really nothing wrong if you downloaded it, if you saved it, if you start it. Those are all perfectly fine if that's working for you. What we're doing here is a little bit extra work for the end result to be more efficient so that when you want to come back to it, it's easier to find. So thank you very much, Sarah, for taking us through that. I'm going to cancel it. Um, Excellent. So yes, we're Google Club's meeting number 7. This is our review of Google Educator Level 1 certification content. You have our slides. The slides also have a link to the slides. I'll probably also add a link to the folder. There's not a lot in the folder, but I'll share that at the end too. And our goals today are just so that you're familiar with Google Educator Level 1 certificate. You absolutely do not have to take it. It's been a helpful sort of index for us, I think, but it absolutely, and I think some people have asked, like, why would I take this certificate? It does cost, I think, $10. Um, it's, if you're interested in Google, it's just one more thing that you can have to show your knowledge, right? So if you want to put this on your LinkedIn, or if you want to put this in your, I just today put it in my signature line because I hadn't done that yet. It is good for 3 years. We'll talk more about the specifics of the test itself, but again, today is useful, I think, even if you're not planning on doing the certificate, but just or the exam for the certificate. We're going to talk as we go through all of this. You're probably going to come across some Google tools that maybe you haven't heard of, or ways to use Google tools that you had thought about doing or didn't know how to do. So this should be an opportunity for you to kind of identify one or two things maybe that you want to do more with. And then there's quite a few resources here for you to go and get additional support, learn more specifically in those areas that you're particularly interested in. So we will cover all those 3 areas. As a reminder, you all have access to DYCD Connect, which is a place where you can go and find out about other workshops that are being offered and other kinds of content. I'm not sure how many of you know who Rong Zhang is, but he was the director of the adult education area at DYCD, and he's there for my whole career. I think I started in 99, and he was there from the beginning of my time. So he's been a very steady, calm leader for us at DYCD. I know that in the most recent times, there's been some issues around funding and things like that. Was not his fault. Anyway, so he retired. And he's also receiving a service award at the NIACE conference next week. If you're interested, there is a link to a online card that you're welcome to sign on to. And I just wanted to make sure you knew about that. Excuse me. All right, so we have 2 more sessions left of Google Club this year. Google Club meeting 8 is show and tell. And I have a link here, and I'll be sending that link out to you all to remind you. We're looking for people to show and tell. Tell us what you've done using Google tools, whether it's successful or you struggled or it was a tiny little thing or a really big thing. We're looking for a few folks to kind of give like a 2 to 10 minute presentation on something that you've tried out that's googly. So there's a sign up list here, and I'll be reaching out to folks. There's no stress. You absolutely do not need to do anything, but this is an opportunity for us all to learn from one another. So I hope you'll consider signing up. And then the last session will be in June, and that will be talking a little bit about how to think about your next steps in the Google world. What I know summer doesn't necessarily mean less work or more free time, but maybe there's something that we can help set our minds to together, and that way we can learn some new things over the summer and come back to Google Club in the fall with some things to report. Um, all right, so Google Educator Level Certificate 1, I'm going to go ahead and put this into slideshow mode. Um, so it is a online exam. It's the basics of Google for Education, which is a little different. You may be using Workspace, so all this terminology changed. You might remember G Suite. There was, this is one of the reasons when you go online to try to find resources, it can be a little tricky because you really do need to find the most recent resources because everything has changed a little bit. So the Google Educator Level 1 certification is aimed at people, K-12 teachers who are working in Google for Education workspace. We, for example, at the LEC have the Google Workspace for nonprofits, which is free, but you have to be a nonprofit to get it, and it gives you access to shared drives and a bunch of other things like that. The Workspace for Education similarly has some particular perks around some additional things you can do in Google Classroom, but you can only get it by being a .edu or by having a school system. So we don't have that. But everything that we covered is something you can do without having to have access to that. So there are like two things that maybe you can't do at all. The rest we just do some things we do slightly differently, but basically we can do all the things that are included here. Again, certificates are really only, they're valuable for you to show your skills, and they're valuable if there's an employer or somebody else who values that certificate. So there's no stress here to say that you need to get the certificate. But if you have been working with Google and there's not a lot sometimes on our resumes that indicates that skill level, this is something that is recognized across the country or internationally even. So it's something to consider, and just for your own edification. I'm just checking the chat. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so let me go back. Sorry. There we go. So the certificate itself costs $10. They give you 180 minutes to take it. It doesn't take that long. I think it's 35 questions. When I took it, I think it took 45 minutes, but you can take that whole time if you want it. It's valid for 3 years. And the one thing I'll say that was a little surprising to me was that you click on register, and I'm used to the idea that then I can just take the thing. I can just take the test. It actually, there's a little delay. So you're going to register, you're going to fill in some information. It's going to tell you what's required. You do need a camera, and you need to be using the most up-to-date version of Chrome, some things like that. But then you'll get it after you've registered and you've agreed to all those things and you've paid your money. Then you'll get an email from them saying that you can take the test. It'll have a link, and you'll have a set amount of time, several days, in which you can take the test. So you can't necessarily guarantee that if you register now, you can take the test today. You may need to wait till tomorrow. So just be aware of that. Particularly when I thought it was going to be a 3-hour test, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to make space for that in my schedule. As I said, it doesn't take that long. And we have some step-by-step guides. I didn't find it hard to do the registration, it is step-by-step, and just know that. All right, so that's that one. I'm now ready, because I've taken that one, I'm interested in doing certification number 2, but I haven't done that yet. So that might, depending on our timing today, maybe I'll sign up for that while we're all together. There are other certificates. So if you are someone who really is interested in Google and maybe wants to move in that direction, there are these higher level certifications, being a certified trainer, or a certified, I think that says coach. Yeah. So those have other layers of, and I'm sort of interested in looking at the certified trainer. Again, some of these cost more money, so you have to decide if it's worth trying out or not. So yes, this is a, if you are, I don't think you need to look at this in advance, but if you start the registration process and you find that you're bumping into things that you don't understand, or it isn't working for you, they have this manual, actually multiple page manual that takes you step by step through the registration process. So you have the link to that here, and that is definitely in our folder, so I'll share that with you later. And then what we've been covering over the last 6 months has been using their kind of outline that they include in their basic use of Google Workspace for Education fundamentals class. So that's something you can do online on your own. We covered everything that they include, but we did it our own way. So we didn't necessarily, they have little videos, they have some conversation, two teachers talking to each other. There's a variety of ways that they share information with you. So if, again, after today, you're really excited, but you weren't able to come to every session, or you just need a quicker review, that you can do this on your own, and it wouldn't take, I think it'd probably take 4 hours at the most. Um, and these are the resources I mentioned. So we have your Earn Your Educator Level 1 certification training, frequent ask questions about it. What's interesting is that there are two different fundamentals. There's one for 2023, which actually I think I've been using the 2021, but maybe the 2023 one. So this obviously is more relevant, but I will say this was an interesting one. Like, it gets into, sort of etiquette, some other aspects of just being a citizen in the world, which is interesting that they took that off for the 2023 version. Um, we might play around with this later. Quizlet, I think several people have created some study sets in Quizlet on the Google Educator certification. They're very broad. They're like, or maybe I shouldn't say they're broad. They drill really down. Like, they have like 245 terms, and they ask questions that I didn't see on the test. So I don't know. It's almost more than you need, but it's an interesting, I think it's very thought provoking. So it might still be an area that you might want to check out. This is a video. I took the Google Educator Level 1 certification exam, and did I pass? And then she talks about doing the level 2. So she, again, will kind of, as it's a video, if you're someone who prefers seeing it visually in a video format rather than like in a step-by-step guide, she kind of takes you through what she experienced while she was signing up for taking it. Um, yeah, and then the intermediate and the advanced training, those are really both for level 2. So if you decide you want to go to level 2, they recommend that you do level 1 first, but in some ways level 2 is kind of, I've also seen it talked about, as it's a 3-year certification. Number 1 is valid for 1 year, that you then would take certification number 2, but 2 is supposed to be a little bit more advanced. So I've seen both things about those. And I'm going to take a moment here. So I said to the folks who got here a little early that I have two new things I learned since I saw you last. One of them is I've gotten to play around a little bit with Notebook LM. Has anyone here that played around with it, or can anyone say what it is? Have you heard of it? It's a Google product, but you might have heard of it without hearing that it was a Google product. It's an AI tool, if that helps. I'm going to check the chat in case there's some shy people there. All right. So Notebook LM is an AI, it's a generative AI tool that allows you to add content, and it accepts a variety of content. It accepts things straight out of your Google Drive because it is a Google product. It can see your Google Drive, and you can tell it to take specific files from there, but you can add other kinds of content as well. And what I did for us is I created one where I went in and I put all the slide decks from our last 6 months and a link to the basic training. And now I have this tool where I can ask questions. So I could say, I don't remember which month it was that we talked about giving feedback to learners using a Google tool. So I could ask that question here. Um, and it will, instead of taking information from the wide databases that sometimes the generative AI does, it's going to look at this content specifically. You can ask it to look at things outside of the content that you gave it, but it does mean that we could really drill down just into a certain set of content. So let me try that. Let's see. Does anyone have a question that they're burning to ask about any of the things that we covered in the last 6 months? I'm going to try that question about feedback. So, what are some ways I can use Google tools to provide feedback on my students' writing? And I'll spell students right. Now you could ask that of ChatGPT, whatever, but we're because we want to understand from this content. And I think, yeah, so what's kind of amazing here is it will actually reference the slide that it's grabbing the content from. So if I wanted to go back to look at the whole slide deck or get to that slide, I can find out that it was that month, it was that slide. Um, but wait, there's more. So over here on the other side, what it also does is it creates a podcast of this content. So if you want to, you can have two AI voices, which are weirdly human sounding. I feel like they cough even, like it's very odd. They can talk about this content. So you could listen to it, if you're driving in the car and you want to hear two people sort of interrogating this content, you can do that. But wait, there's more. You can actually ask them questions. You can interact with these two AI voices and have sort of a, well, yeah, but I don't know if I really believe that that's what that meant, or you can have this kind of conversation with them. There are some other things it created. I tried out the study guide, for example, or the briefing doc. The study guide, I mean, I don't know that I would find it so helpful for what we're doing, but it has a lot of content in it. The briefing one was interesting in that let's see, how do I get back? Um, what was interesting with the briefing doc is kind of like here, where you can reference back to the actual space where it got the content. It will give you oh, it's doing a new one. Sorry, do it there. Um, yeah, it also lists explicitly where it found those particular points. So I used this because I was at a conference and I was like, well, when I come back from my conference, so the things that challenge me with going to conferences is that I'm a pretty bad note taker. Like I'm a really good talker and I can really interact with the information and I'll remember a lot from doing that, but I'm very poor at actually writing down full sentences or organized notes that I can come back to and really understand everything. I'm really famous for writing like 12 and it's like, what was that? I don't know what that meant. So I used a different AI tool called Fireflies to listen to my sessions and summarize them. And I took those summaries and I put them into Notebook. And now I technically have a POAB 2025 notebook where I can, and I did ask this because I went to a session on sort of math anxiety and I'm very interested in digital resilience and I see an overlap and I could ask Notebook LM, tell me, can you tell me how math phobia or math anxiety is similar, or ways that were talked about to help resolve math anxiety could be applied to digital resilience. And it could tell me some stuff. And for me, that's a much more active way for me to get back to content from that very intense period of time where like I was sort of being bombarded by information, and it's very easy for me to come back to my home and put everything in a folder and put it in my drawer and kind of forget about it. So I kind of think that this could be a way to stay more active in there. And I was using it here as a way to think about how you could create some study guides for yourself or for your learners as well. You could help this idea of curation we talked about at the very beginning, where this is a curated set of data that you want your learners to get their answers from, or they create their own notebooks. But again, it sort of sets this the set of data is more specific than the broad world of large language models or whatever. The one thing that I've struggled with this notebook LM is that to share it, it looks like I can give you a link, but when I give that link to you, it will tell you that you cannot access it. So you really have to invite people using their Gmail accounts. If you would like me to invite you to this, you're welcome to put your Gmail in the chat and I can stick you right in here. But I can't even put this link into our slides because when you click on it, it will tell you you don't have access. So I'm still trying to figure that out. It seems like that's something I should be able to give access to without having to invite people, but that's not what I've found so far. All right, any questions about Notebook LM? It is free. So currently it is free. Everything that I did here was free. You do have to have a Google account and you have to log into your Google account. So if you have more than one, you have to remember which one you used. But yeah, everything I did that I showed you here and that I've used it for, I used for free. Um, but I think, it's to me, when I first heard about it, I didn't really have a use for it. And I'm trying to figure out if there are uses for it. And so far, the conference one kind of worked for me. If I was studying for a very intense exam like the GED or Google certificate, I could see that being valuable too. I think you could ask them to ask you questions. I think there are some other AIs that can do that as well. But so those are the things that, in a sense, it's not the same as making a mini bot or whatever, but it kind of has the fact that you're curating what content it's using, I think is what's special about this particular tool, where so many of the other AIs are kind of just going out into large data sets that we don't necessarily control. Okay, excellent. Rifat, I'm going to share my link with you while I'm talking. Let's see here. So yeah, if you want me to invite you, I'm very happy to do that. This will be fast. So let me do it. Yes, there you go. Okay, and you can add your email anytime you want to the chat, and I'll at the end I'll share it with you if you're interested. So whatever, that was a direct message. You can send me a direct message if you don't want everyone to see your email. That's fine. Okay, so that's our notebook LM. So we do have a notebook right now that has all of that content in it. If you're interested in playing around with that. So here were the topics that we kind of covered, right? We had a sort of introduction to workspace for education. We talked about organizing our classroom, which in this case was sort of like our drive. We talked about how we can use Google tools to communicate with students and parents. Again, noticing that this is kind of that K-12 idea, but obviously communication is something we want to do. So we want to communicate with our learners, we want to communicate with our colleagues, possibly with parents, I don't know. Managing time effectively, both for ourselves and as structures for your learners to have. Managing student work, which kind of goes back into this organizing classroom a little bit, and then measuring student progress. So these were the big buckets of stuff that we looked at. Um, so can anyone tell me what this icon is as one of the tools that we used? Drive, yay! I see a few people putting it in the chat. Fantastic. So that's Drive, and Drive really was probably the big tool at the very beginning, where how like a little bit what we talked about at the very beginning today. Like how do you put things in Drive? How do you organize Drive? How do you get back to the things you want to get to? Which is really important if you're thinking about this as your structure for tracking student work, tracking your own work, or having access to things that you created once before and be able to share them again. So the session on organizing classroom was a lot about what we did today, like renaming something, having a convention for your file name so you can come back and find something even if you can't remember the whole name, change the color of a folder, starring things, making sure that you're sharing things the way you want to share them. So is it with view only access or edit access or commenting access? So there's a lot of that content that you want to be familiar with. All right, what are these icons? So this was Google Communication Tools. Can anyone tell me what this first one is? I'll look at the chat again.
Gmail.
Gmail, yes, indeed. So we have Gmail, which obviously is a very good communication tool if people are looking at their email. What's this one? Chat. Yes, Francis, you said chat, and you are right. So this is Google Chat, which is a messaging tool, but it has that ability, you can create groups in there and you can manage when people can actually communicate with you. What about this next one? We have two purple tools. One is, well, I'm not going to say. Yes, so Francis thinks Forms because Forms is purple as well. Sites, thank you, Naima. So both Forms and Sites are purple. I'll say that when you see them together, the Forms is a little bit of a pinker purple, maybe a warmer purple. And then, yeah, this is Sites exactly. So again, often, they try to put some little hints in there, but, once you know it, you know it. But then anyway, whatever. So yeah, Sites. So the idea here was that, you could create a Google site to post homework or keep learners up to date in the stuff that was covered in class. So again, for communication, very useful. And what's this last one? Yay, Google Meets, Google Zoom, exactly. So it's the equivalent of Zoom, but for Google. And it's called, let's see if I put the name in there. So it is called Google Meet. I don't know if any of you are using Google Meet, if you're doing remote instruction. We kind of stuck with Zoom because we found that Meet's not always got the bandwidth is kind of wacky, but it's another set of, very much similar to Zoom and lets you uh, share your screen and do things like that. Yeah. So, and it's free, right? So it comes with all your googly stuff, where Zoom, many of us are paying for. Excellent. Google Time Management Tools. What's that first one with the number 31 in it? And just unmute or put it in the chat because I can't see everybody's faces. What is this one over here? What's 31? What has 31
Google
days?
Calendar.
Yes, calendar. Perfect. So this is for time management, right? And if you're familiar with Google Calendar, you can have multiple calendars and change the view so you only see one calendar at a time. So maybe all the assignments are on one calendar and then everyone's birthdays are on another calendar. It sends out reminders. So it can be a very useful way for people to manage their time, both for you as a teacher or as an administrator, and then also teaching your learners about this. They don't have to use the Google one. Maybe they're using something already on their phone, but it's easy and it's there already with your account. Okay, very nice. What about the next one? So again, time management tools, or maybe we could say productivity tools. Tasks. Thank you,
Tasks.
Francis. Yes, excellent, Naima. So I don't know, again, depending on the phone you may have another tool that you use to make to-do lists. This Google Tasks does connect with Google Calendar. So if you wanted to create a task list and actually put in deadlines, those deadlines will show up on your calendar. And it is something that you could create a task list on your computer and see the task list on your phone. So it can be a useful tool. I still don't use it a lot. I have to say I'm kind of an Outlook calendar person because we have Outlook at work, but I really use this last one over here. Who can tell me what this yellow one is? This is one of my favorites, but a lot of people don't know what it is. Naima, did you try, were you saying it?
I think it's Keep.
It is Keep. Yes. So Google
I think
Keep,
it's Keep. Yeah.
Google Keep is the Google Notes tool, but it has a lot of with I don't know if any of you have used Evernote, or there are many other note-taking tools that include, the ability to make to-do lists like Google Tasks does. But Google Keep has a lot. It for me, it just hits that sweet spot of both having a lot of functions but not being overwhelming. I was a big early adopter of Evernote. You may know Evernote. Evernote got too crazy. It was too complicated. And then I used Trello for a little while, which is another tool. And okay, so someone has asked to start the AI companion, and I'm gonna
Sorry, it was my mistake. It
no, no,
was my
okay.
error.
I'm gonna deny it. I'm not against the AI thing, but I want to start with give everyone being okay with it before I do it. So thank you. That's all good. So Google Keep has, again, as I was saying with Google Task, right? I can open a Google Keep on my phone and make a to-do list while I'm waiting for the bus, or look for a recipe and stick it into my Google Keep. I can sort by tagging it, but in a very light way. I can change the color of my notes if that's helpful for me to kind of sort through things. I can pin some to the top. But it allows me to bring in images. I can actually annotate those images. I can actually use it to grab text from images. And they've just added some formatting, so you can actually format your messages, and you can share. So you could share a specific note with a learner, with a spouse, with a child. I tried doing it with my brother-in-law for a Thanksgiving shopping spree, and he was not enthused, but that was because he'd never used it before. If you're familiar with it, sharing it's very easy. If it's a new thing where you have to download a new app just to get a stupid note, then I can see why that'd be frustrating. But anyway, so Google Calendar, Google Tasks, and Google Keep are all wonderful tools that are free, part of your account, and are useful for Google time management practice. Okay, now we're looking at Google tools for management and feedback. What's that first one with the little people inside the yellow frame? Does anyone know what this first one is? So we're talking about management and feedback specifically in education situation.
Yeah.
Google Classroom.
Yes, Google Classroom. I think this is supposed to be a chalkboard, right? So that's their emblem for Google Classroom. Very good. And Google Classroom is really just a way, kind of like Google Drive, it's a way, it's a single space, but it has access out to all of these different tools. So if you're in Google Classroom, you can bring in documents, you can bring in sheets, you can add videos, all the Google universe can be looked at and interacted with in Google Classroom. What is important to remember, though, is that all that content actually goes back to your drive. So even though you and your learners might be accessing it through Google Classroom, you will also be able to go into your Google Drive and find the folder that has, and all the multiple folders that might be created in there by Google Classroom. So it is connected. We already did the second one. That's our Google Drive. Now, what about this green one in the middle? The little box.
Sheets.
Sheets,
Google
exactly.
Sheets.
Sheets. Does anyone have, so I have to say that I remember Sheets partially because green numbers equals money equals green. I don't know if that's helpful for people, but part of the reason I'm doing this activity is that this is important. Noticing the icon that actually will show up when you have your computer on and you have your browser open and you're using any of these tools, these little icons will show up in those tabs, and it makes it easier. It's more efficient way to move around between your tabs once you notice that, oh, I only have one sheet document open. I don't have to remember which one I'm going to. I don't have to go through everything that's along my tabs. So I think this is a kind of activity to do with learners. I think it's a great activity for us to practice on our own, but just to know that there's a reason to be able to associate icons with their names. So yes, Google Sheets, fantastic. What's blue?
Docs.
Docs,
Docs.
exactly. And I do think both of these echo Microsoft. So blue and green are similarly Excel and Word docs in Microsoft as well. And what about this last one, our other purple icon? You can see it's a little different purple.
Forms.
Yes, so that's our forms. Fantastic. Nice. Okay, and here we have again forms and sheets. This was for measuring student progress, and this was our last session where I think we did a lot with forms, and forms has changed a little bit recently. You might have noticed you now have to publish it if you make a form, and I think some of the tips we went through, like you could get to a quiz template more easily perhaps than going into settings. So there were some things we did there, self-scoring quizzes. Sheets, kind of like Excel, I kind of think those are the deepest tools. Like I feel like most people, there are obviously some people who are super like know everything about both, but or either one of them. But many of us are using some part of the tool. Like I think I very rarely have to do any real accounting, but I often have to track how many people actually showed up to an event, or I have to add additional names to a list, and I don't want to duplicate things. Like those are skills I've learned, but someone in accounting might not need as much. So with both with Sheets and with Excel, I feel like we're often using just some piece of it, but it can be really rich. And what we covered were a lot of formulas and how to get formulas in that session. Okay. So we're going to get into some knowledge checks right now. And the idea here is this is really what the test is like. If you decide you want to take the test, it's this new, I don't know how many of you have taken a standardized test recently, but I took the GRE maybe 4 years ago. And this reminds me of that in that there's a little bit of trickiness in the layout of things. So what I'm going to ask folks to, I'm going to have the chat open and I'm going to look there, but I'm going to ask you to, because they don't letter the answers, I lettered them this way. So it's A, and then B is next to A, and then C is below A, and D is below B. So when you have an answer and you want to put it in the chat, you can certainly type the whole thing, but you can also just put in a letter, but just know that these are the letters I'm referencing. And I made that little code at the top there, so on future slides you'll still see that, but I haven't labeled every box that way. So this question says, select the 2 ways you can organize your files in Google Drive. And I want us to notice the word "to" here, right? This is where we get very sloppy. I get very sloppy in reading actually everything. And I've definitely had situations like this where I just put in one answer. Yay, I see answers coming in. A and C are what I'm seeing people say. So we have selecting a color coding system. So select 2 ways you can organize your files in Google Drive. This is the magic word, I think, is in Google Drive. So we have selecting a color coding system is A. B is use the search function. C is renaming folders based on subject. And D is listing in a sheet. And I'm seeing a lot of A's and C's, and I would agree 100%. So the way I've set the slides deck up is if I click again, it's going to show the answers. So you can play at home again if you want to. But yes, selecting color coding system and renaming folders are the 2 things you can actually do in Google Drive. These other 2 you could do, but they're not, or like searching is not organizing, and listing on a sheet is not in Google Drive, or technically not in Google Drive. Yeah, you could argue with me, but that would be my point. Fantastic. Okay, on to our next question. Now, notice though we had 2, and I don't know if you noticed, but we actually had little squares for our check boxes. On our next one, it says select the one way you can change Google settings. And notice we have circles. So this is actually true in Google Forms, and I think this was true actually in the GRE, and I'm guessing it's true in GED. We could find out more. But if you have square boxes, that usually means there's more than one right answer. You're being asked to give more than one answer. And if you see circles, you can only give one answer. So that's a clue for us all to keep in our minds. Okay, so select the one way you can change Google settings. And again, using that little, yes. So are you saying it? So we have Google settings are fixed based on which app you're using, which is A. B is you can change Google Drive settings as long as you are using the device you created the original file on. C is you can change Google Drive settings across all devices. And D is you can only change Google Drive settings from your computer and not with your mobile device. And I have to say, which one?
I think it's B.
B.
I
Excellent.
think so.
That would be this one. You can change Google Drive settings as long as you're using a device you created the original file on. I see we have a C here as well. So that would be you can change Google Drive settings across all devices. I have to tell you, I got this one wrong, and I got it wrong 3 times. So I was very wrong. It is actually D. So you can only
That's
change.
the same.
Say that again.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You can only change Google Drive settings from your computer and not on your mobile device. The question was a little bit confusing because they didn't mention the Google Drive settings in the question. And if it was just about Google Drive, if I look at my phone, yeah, I don't actually see settings for my Google Drive. So, okay, I learned that one the hard way. Select the 3 benefits of a live document. And notice, do we have circles or do we have squares? We have squares. So we have checkboxes that are square shaped, and we know that we need to give 3 benefits of a live document. So basically you're looking for the one that is not a benefit. So A, you can use it to collaborate on a single document as a group. B, you can use it to save multiple versions. C, you can use it for gathering feedback. And D, you can use it as a tool in the classroom for your students to collaborate together. Anybody guess which one is not a benefit? Or yes, A, C, D, I see someone said, so those are the 3 that you think are a benefit. I would agree with you, Rifat. So yes, the fact that you can have a live document is exactly why you won't have multiple versions. So absolutely correct. Those other 3 are your answers. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning today of why we recommend that you keep a shortcut to my slides, because that is a live document. If you were to download it or save it today, and then you wanted to come back to the new version, you would not have you wouldn't have any of the new updates, and then you would end up with multiple versions. So multiple versions is kind of the non-cloud or non-Google way of doing things. And I know it's one of the things that makes people nervous about Google sometimes is that, people just go in and edit and you don't get to see the different iterations, but you can do that in the history. Anyway, so yes, those other 3 are the right answers. Which Gmail feature allows you to automatically organize your inbox? A, search inbox. B, mark as important. C, starred emails. And D, priority inbox. And how many are we supposed to find? Which Gmail feature? Singular. And we have only circles. So we know we only need to pick one answer. Anybody have an answer? Which Gmail feature allows you to automatically organize your inbox? D. Rafat says D. I agree. So you can do these other things, right? But searching is not organizing. Marking as important is not automatic. You are doing that. And starring emails also would not be automatic. So priority inbox is how you can tell Gmail, what do I want to have come into my priority inbox? And then going forward, it will just do that for you. So that's the automatic and organize. Beautiful. Which three of the below are benefits of using Google Chat to communicate with colleagues and guardians? So again, we're looking for the three. We have some boxes. It might be easiest to identify the one that doesn't give you the benefit or isn't a benefit. But we have A, collaboration in real time with instant messaging. B, communicate with up to 100 people in a text chat. C, communicate with up to 400 people in a text chat. Or D, you can mute chat notifications out of office hours. So which are the three that you are benefits? So if you've never used Google Chat, there you go. A and D, and why not C, says Francis. So yes, I will say that it is actually that larger number. So it's A, C, D, exactly. There you go. So the trick answer was that it's not just 100 people. It's actually, you can have up to 400 people in a chat if you ever want to do that. Fantastic. Okay. Select which one of the following is not a customization feature of Google Sites. A, invite others to collaborate. B, upload images, texts, and resources. C, unique theme options for each page. Or D, creating and nesting pages in your site. Which one can you not customize? A, B, C, D. You guys are shy. So can we invite other people to work on a website with us? Yes, we can. Just like with almost everything else I know in Google, we can have a collaborator with us working on it together with us. B, can we add images and text and resources to our websites? Absolutely. That's why we want to have a website, right? To have that content. C, unique theme options for each page. This is the tricky one. You could absolutely pick a theme, but it's not by page, it's by website. So once you choose a theme, it's going to be applied to your whole website. You can go in and tweak it, but the theme is the same across the whole website. So that is actually the correct answer. And then the last one is creating and nesting pages in your site. So you can have multiple pages on your website, and by nesting, we mean that you have a menu, maybe you have a tab that says homework, and then you might have a nesting menu that says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and people can click on those days and get just to that day. So yes, correct answer is unique theme options for each page is not available in Google Sites. All right. Which one of the following is not a benefit of using Google Meet? A, students can call teachers anytime. B, teachers can connect with guardians remotely. C, Google Meet can connect with your calendar. And D, students can be taught in different locations. Which one is not either not true or not a benefit? I see people saying A, right? Students can call teachers anytime. I believe that is the right answer because you can decide when you're available. And yes, so that is not A, that maybe is not a benefit, and B is something that you can impact the student. It's not just a Wild West where anyone can just contact you at any time. You can set the times that you're available. Nice. Okay, which statement is true? Each calendar you create can have separate permissions, but you can't share the settings. This one is annoying because every answer is a similar, like just taking off a little bit of whatever the answer is. Okay, so again, A, each calendar you create can have separate permissions, but you can't share the settings. B, each calendar you create must have all the same permissions and you can't share the settings. C, each calendar you create must have all the same permissions, but you can share the settings. And D, each calendar you create can have separate permissions and you can share the settings. Which one is true? Which one would you like to have be true? I'm seeing are the A's just for now? We have a D from Sarah. So I believe the answer is D, but let's check. Yes. So each calendar you create can have separate permissions, right? Which makes sense. I create a calendar for my family. Only my family can access it. I have another calendar that's for my students in class A, and I have another calendar that's for my students in class B. And only those groups of people can actually access their specific calendar. And I can share settings, which I actually don't even know what that really means. But I did kind of realize that Google likes to toot its own horn. So they're very happy that they're giving you the most options here. So it was D. Okay. Which of the following does not describe a feature of Google Keep? So Google Keep, I think, is still a little new for folks, but maybe in the parts that we talked about, you'll know. So which of the following does not describe a feature of Google Keep? We have circles, so we only have to give one answer. A is Keep is a note-taking app. B, Keep uses smart chips to add calendar events and other Google documents to a note. C, you can share and collaborate on notes. And D, you can record multiple notes to brainstorm ideas. And again, if you're not that familiar, it might be tricky. Rifat, I think you are the one who typed B, and I agree. B is the one that it doesn't care about these smart chips. If you're familiar with the kind of last 6 months of Google, where they allow you to kind of add these, not just the hyperlink to a document, but like what they call as a smart chip that is like a little button. That's not really part of Google Keep at this point. So Google Keep does not use smart chips to add calendar events and Google Documents to a note. In fact, I don't really think there's a good feedback in there for calendar that I've ever used. But again, like I said, I don't use the Google Calendar so much. All right, I think we're getting there. Which page do you need to go to in Google Classroom to enroll or add students? A, the stream. Thank you. I see Naima's already answered it. It is people. So A is stream, B is classwork, C is people, D is grades. Makes sense, right? We're adding students who are people. So yes, people is the right answer. Which page do you need to go to in Google Classroom to assign work and collect assignments? A, grades, B, classwork, C, stream, and D, people. B would be the right answer. Rifat, I see you got it in there. They're not really pulling any punches here. They were trying to make Google Classroom as user-friendly as possible. So these things are labeled kind of logically when you see it here. Sometimes in the actual tool, it can feel a little bit more confusing, but yes, absolutely. Classwork is the place you go to add assignments. Which of the following is a feature in Docs that will help you save time when giving feedback to students? A, building blocks. B, sorted paragraphs. C, comment bank. D, tasks. And again, we have circles, so we only need one answer. So what do you think would help you? Are there such a thing as building blocks? And I don't know what a sorted paragraph would be, but yes, comment bank. I see some answers in there. C, comment bank is right. So you can, if you're going into your students' work and you're working with 10 students and you want to give them feedback, or maybe there's just feedback that you give quite often, you can add those to your comment bank. And then when you're making a comment on someone's paper, you can see that list and pick from it. So it's a little bit faster than retyping the same comments over and over again. But you can still type a new comment if it doesn't already exist in your bank. Fantastic. Okay, which two of the following statements about Google Forms is true? And notice we have our squares here. So two answers we need that are true. A, students must answer the survey or quiz in one setting. This minimizes cheating if it is a marked assessment. B, if your class time is cut short, students can start again when they log in to their account next time. C, survey or quiz responses are saved as a draft for 5 days, so students can go at their own pace when responding. And D, survey or quiz responses are saved as a draft for 30 days, so students can go at their own pace when responding. What do you guys think? So this is specifically about using that survey or quiz, and you've had some experience taking surveys and quizzes using Google Forms, even if, and many of you probably have made them. So I see Rafat saying A. So which two? We need two answers. B and D, I see from Sarah. So again, what is your own experience, right? Which two of the following statements about Google Forms is true? Students must, and let's say people must answer the survey or quiz in one setting. This minimizes cheating if it is marked, if it's a marked assessment. B, if your class time is cut short, students can start again when they log into their account next time. C, survey or quiz responses are saved as a draft for 5 days, so people can go at their own pace when responding. And D, survey or quiz responses are saved for 30 days, so people can go at their own pace. So I'm seeing A and B, I'm seeing B and D. This is a good one, right? I don't even know the answer. Let's go and see. What is the answer? So if your class time is cut short, students can start again when they log into their account next time. And I'm not even sure what that means. Does that mean they have to start over, or do they have to, they just can get back to where they were? If we're looking at that A, students must answer the survey or quiz in one setting. You know, some of this is a little tricky because it's kind of, I think with the survey and quiz, you know, you can set it up so people can respond more than one time. But I'm trying to think of a situation where I start answering something while I'm in class, and then I go home and I get back to the link, whether it would just take me back to where I was. That's an interesting one. But they're claiming that it is B and D. So we can experiment and prove them wrong. Are we getting close to the end here? Okay, so what are two ways you view Google Form responses? And we see two, and we see boxes. So we know we have to pick two answers. A is setting up a spreadsheet. B is using the summary tab. C is on a grid rubric, and D is using the response tab. Which two are ways you can look at responses on a form? I see A and D, and I would agree. So when you are looking at responses, usually you start by looking at that response tab in the back end of your form. And then you can select that you want to create a spreadsheet from there. So those are the two ways that we generally look at responses. You can create a grid rubric, but the answers will show up under responses and on a spreadsheet. And then summary tab, I don't even think there is a summary tab. Fantastic. Okay, this is the last one. And this is from last week when we were learning some new formulas. And this was a formula that I did not know and is actually very useful for me. So I'm very excited to have learned it. Which is the correct formula for counting cells with text data in them? We have A, count equals count A. We have B equals unique, and then in parentheses, A:A. We have equals average with parentheses is C, and D is equals count. And I'm seeing some D's in there as an answer. I know, this is exciting. Okay, here's the deal. D will only count numbers. So if you're using sheets and you have a column of numbers and you highlight it, or you put in equals count, it will count how many cells have numbers in them, but it will not count any cells that have words in them. That's when you need to use the count A. So A is the correct answer. And that's for you to know. As I said, I'm often not counting numbers, I'm counting people's names or something like that. So it's very helpful for me to be able to get a count easily. And usually, you can kind of track the counting down the side, but what if you wanted to pull out something from the middle of a list? You can do that by highlighting and then doing an equals count A, and it will count. This specific issue here is the text data, not just number data. Yay, something new, maybe for some of you. Okay. I'm now going to stop sharing stop having that in slideshow mode. I kept it in slideshow mode because for the function of the game where the animation works, you have to be in slideshow mode. But just know that on all those slides, the answers are just right behind. I just animated it so that the slides moved or the images moved. So if you want to go back and play with any of these, you can do that. Okay, so are there questions? Did that make you feel like you knew a lot, or do you feel now that you're like, oh, I don't know stuff I want to know? I'm gonna look at your faces. Were there particular tools that it made you interested in trying out, or you're like, ooh, I know some things a lot? Okay, so I'm seeing some people say you need to learn a lot. Now, I will say the certificate, if you can do the things you want to be able to do, one of the trickiest things I think with technology stuff is that you don't even know what is possible, right? So if you don't know what's possible, it's hard. Like I always remember we had a situation at work where our fiscal office suddenly, and never before had to do this, but they suddenly had to make 10, maybe 20 contracts for 20 different people that were really the same. They just had to put in the different person's name. And they didn't know there was such a thing as a mail merge. So they couldn't even begin to think, wow, I could just do a mail, I could have a list of the people I need to do. I do a mail merge, and then the contracts will just automatically have the different people's names on them. Do I remember how to do a mail merge? No, but I know it exists, and then I can Google it. So knowing something exists is our first step. And then thinking about how it's useful to you. If you're never going to use Google Keep, you don't need to learn about Google Keep. If you're not going to use Google Calendar, that's not high priority for you. But if you're like, oh my gosh, that piece about like the count A, that was really useful, then that's an area for you to go into because those formulas are really helpful. And you could just learn 5 of them and your life that are specific to your needs, and your life would be made simpler. And thinking about your learners, right? That your learners are going to come to you with questions or issues that they're trying to work on. And if you're a little bit aware of some places you can go look for answers, then maybe there's tools and skills that come out of that a lot. I think in the beginning, I don't think we did it this year. I think we did it last year. Last year we had kind of a pre-quiz about Google that included your feelings about like how much you knew and whatever. And then at the end we did another one, and it was terrible because everyone felt worse after the session. And I think it is because you do become aware of all the things you didn't know, and that feels a little bit uncomfortable. And that's not the goal of this. The goal is that I mean, obviously you chose to be here today because you're up for learning new things. This kind of helps point the direction maybe of the things you're going to learn. So if you do take the certificate and you do pass it, and you can take it, I think twice, and then you might have to wait a little while to take it again and you don't want to spend all that money. But you get a certificate, and you also get a little badge, which this is the thing I tried adding to my email signature. We'll see if it's showing up in there. I don't even know. All right, let's see here. If you are not interested in the certificate, but you are interested in more googly things, there are some other resources here that are not specific to the certificates. So the skill shop where you saw those first courses to help you practice for the certificate, they have a lot of topics. So if we go there, yeah. So we were really working in Google for Education, but there are all these different academy, and there's so much there. So again, next when we are talking next time, Grow with Google is something that's kind of got these very specific things for small businesses. It's really aimed at small businesses. So when we meet at the last time and we're talking about things to think about doing for the summer, this might be an area to come back and explore and identify a specific area that you might be interested in learning more about. And then, yes, Sean.
What do you think of this recent ruling about Google having to break up because of the monopoly? It was proven guilty. Do you have any sense of what's going to happen next?
I have no sense of what's going to happen next. They've done a lot over the years. Like they bought YouTube. They do. I don't know what the actual pronouncement was as far as like if there were specific parts of Google that will need to be broken off. And I'm guessing they'll have really tricky ways to handle that where they get to, it's interesting, right? To spin off the business side from the education side, for example, or to spin off um, creation tools versus like Google Ads and things like that that are so. I mean, they're making we're using Google for free. It's not free, right? It's Google Ads. It's the data that we're sharing with them. Like they're making a lot from us. So I'll definitely do some reading about that and see if we can find out if there are any prognostications, or maybe anyone here
Yeah.
has some thoughts. Yeah, but I have not ideas, and it's not
Okay.
popping up on my Google phone, strangely. I'm sure my Google phone will not tell me things that are bad about Google, but who knows? Maybe it will. So yes, these are all things that Google put together. Then we have the applied digital skills, which is, again, they've kind of aimed it at learners, but I often find that it's more something that a teacher might want to go through. These are applied digital skills, so they're very specific, using a specific tool or a specific set of tools to do something else. So it's not just learning how to make Google Slides, but it's using Google Slides to tell a story or make a game or something like that. And again, these are off there. When you go to apply digital skills, you can actually look around inside there without logging in. Let's go look at it. This is how, I mean, I was using Google, but I was using it pretty lightly. And then I got involved in this. COABE for a little while was training people on this set of curriculum. And I was really happy because they were finally thinking about adult education as much as K-12. So this is one of the first tools I saw them come out with that was as easy or as meaningful for adult education. So even without logging in here, I can go in to browse the curriculum. When I teach this, I often do it as a bit of a scavenger hunt or a treasure hunt. So you go in and check it out because there are 216 different lessons. I wouldn't even call them lessons. I don't know what to call them. Different projects. And they vary, right? They vary a lot. So 45 minutes to 90 minutes, but you'll see some are 7 to 9 hours. You can sort them by audience. I find this to be the least useful because I will tell you there are some really great lessons that work for adult learners that are designed originally for late elementary or middle school. It's all the content that matters. The actual skill set and the way they're taught is really similar. So I don't use the audience very much, but I would definitely come in here to say, what is it that I want us, like I'm going to be doing a lesson on, I would like to talk about critical thinking, right? So I'm going to click on that. And it looks like there's only one on critical thinking. So that sorted that really quickly. If I get rid of that one and I document formatting, like I really want my learners to feel comfortable formatting their documents, there's a few more, right? 51. And then I can come over here and I could say, well, I specifically want them to learn how to format things in docs. And that took us to 46, which is not a huge help. But then we can scroll down and we can see, is there a lesson that makes a lot of sense? And the lessons are mostly made up of like 2-minute videos and then an activity that's done on the side. You can incorporate this into Google Classroom. In fact, I think that's going to be the new. They used to have sort of a version of Google Classroom here where you could actually create a class and invite people in. Now they're moving all that over to Google Classroom. So that's one of the big changes that's happened. So again, for you and your own learning, this to me is amazing. I learned how to do that linking from one slide to another out of order in a Google Slides document from taking, they had an activity here that was if then stories. So you could create a game where, you're creating sort of decision trees. Like I was walking to school and I realized I'd forgotten my umbrella. Do I go back or do I keep walking? And then if you choose I keep walking, it starts to rain. And that, so you can have this if then story. But that was all done using that connecting to slides out of order. Okay. And then I've been keeping these in here, but this is to remind you that there's some ways to force actions when you share links. And I've actually what I've learned recently is I can get rid of even all of this stuff. You don't even have to have that. So if you just stick template preview at the end, or you stick present for slides, copy, or edit, this edit is what you see normally, and you might think it means that people can edit. It doesn't mean that. So you cannot tell from the link what level of access you've given people, and the link stays the same even when you change the level of access. So just know that. And I'm going to share both the sign up sheet and the evaluation in the chat. And meanwhile, if you have questions, please ask questions. I'm going to actually stop sharing too. So is there anyone who's thinking about doing the certificate? No? Maybe. Sarah says maybe. Sean is saying not now. Who knows? Maria, were you saying something? She looked a little positive. Maybe. Oh, Francis may be doing. All right. I'm excited. Again, the beauty of this is you don't have to do it now, right? Like it is available to you anytime. Just know there's a slight delay between when you decide you want to do it and when you can do it. But it'd be very exciting. So if you do end up doing it, please let me know, because that's very exciting, and we can have a special club for just the people who have their certificate. No, I'm joking. We would never do that. All right. I think I said I was going to share. So we're back to our old. Okay, so this is the link to sign up to do a little demonstration, a little show and tell next meeting in May. And let me get the evaluation link as well. And if you have questions about, sharing your thing or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. But anything you're doing is interesting to us. Everyone else here has tried some stuff out, and you may have felt like it didn't work, or you maybe were really happy with it, or it didn't quite resolve the problem you had. But this is the group of people to share that kind of stuff with, because we want to know what you tried, and we also might have suggestions if it didn't work perfectly the first time. So I will, after this meeting, what I do is I download our video, I put it up on our blog, I add the slides there, and then I send you an email, and it might not be until tomorrow, with the slides, and I'll remind you about the show and tell sign up. And if I'll be checking that list, and if I don't see people, I might be reaching out to you just in case, I can cajole you into doing it. But it really is not, no one here is mean and terrible. We're all lovely, and we'd love to hear what you've been doing. All right, any questions about what we covered today, or other things that you've been doing, or things you've been trying to do? All right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes back if that's the case. So if you're ready to head out, head out. If you want to stick around and ask me some question when there's fewer people here, you can do that. So very lovely to see you all. And I look forward to seeing what you've been doing in May.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.